as an instructor, I get to see a lot of my employees when they're first starting their fire careers. You know, their first day, wide-eyed, you know, bushy-tailed, ready to go, ready to please, ready to be happy, you know, just enjoy. And a lot of them don't, they know that they are here to fight fire, or they're here to learn about fire, but a lot of them don't quite understand the concept of what being a wildland firefighter entails. And I see people of all age groups. I mean, from 18-year-olds all the way up to 70-plus-year-olds that come and start fighting fire at those ages. At all education levels, too. I mean, people with PhDs and people, you know, who've got bachelor's degrees all the way down to third and fourth, year education. You know, so there's a huge wide variety of students that come to fight fire, and I really enjoy fire because it draws. You don't have to have a high school diploma, you don't have to have anything, but if you do, it still doesn't, none of that really matters. All that matters is the desire. You have to want to do it. If you're doing fire to make money, you'd be sorely disappointed. You have to love fighting fire, and we have a saying, it kind of gets into your blood. So when I see my students on the first day, what I try to do is build that teamwork right away, because in this generation that we live in, a lot of people are kind of like me first, and you can't be like that on fire. You have to work as a team. And when we get students, they're not always able to work as a team yet. We have to teach them how to work as a team without saying you have to work as a team. Because when you say that, it's kind of like, well, I do, you know. So in the first day, in the first hour of my class, the way I set up my tables is very specific for my classroom setting. I start out, each table, you know, is in rows, just like you would see in a regular classroom. So when the students come in, I take note of where they sit. People who sit in front of a classroom, they're there for a specific reason. They sit where they do. They want to hear, they want to see, and they want to engage with what's going on in the classroom. People who have a tendency to sit in the back, they may be interested, but they're not sure yet. They probably don't want to participate because that's what they've been, that's the way they've been their whole life. Or they're shy, you know, they don't want to be seen, you know, kind of thing. And in fire, you can't be like that. So I pay attention to who sits where. I also set up the books in a certain way. I only put books on certain tables. And I don't put any books on the very back row of the tables. If someone sits down where there's no book, when there's empty seats with a book, that tells me something as well. That tells me, okay, well, they're really comfortable back there in the background. They're not comfortable being, you know, up front or closer to this. And since firefighters are typically a type A personality, we're very forceful, very loud, you know, really speak our mind. That timidity that you see in people who, you know, don't really want to engage or be part of the team needs to be worked out right away. So I do my introduction, and I go through all the little, you know, what were your expectations of the class and all that fun stuff. And then I stand them all up, and I rearrange every one of them. Because oftentimes, too, friends will sit together, you know, best friends, and then you have a whole different dynamic you have to deal with in class. You know, the best friends are going to be chatting with each other, they're going to be texting each other, they're going to be playing with each other, they're going to be fiddling around when they should be paying attention. They're not really going to get as much out of a class as if you would split them up. So what I do is I form teams, like squads. A crew on fire is made up of squads. So there's a lead crew boss, somebody who's in charge, and in the classroom setting, that's me. I'm the instructor, I'm the engine boss, I'm the crew boss. And then in a crew on fire, there's squad bosses, and they're in charge of a certain number of people on that crew. And so it makes it easier for the crew boss, because the squad boss then is the only person that comes and talks to them. And although the crew boss has a relationship with each person on that crew, really their chain of command is the squaddies. So then what I do is I break them into squads in each of their tables, and I may have them rearrange their tables. So instead of it being a typical classroom arrangement, by the time they're done, usually it's one group. They're one cohesive group, and they're in little squads in the class. Then I make it very clear, because I learned early on in fire that if you don't make your expectations clear to your employees or your group, you can't expect them to meet those expectations. So I let them know, here's what I expect, or what you should expect from yourselves. Each of them succeed or fail together. There is no, that was your fault. It was the team's fault. There is no, I did great. It's the team did great. So everything they do is the team. If they notice that one person is struggling or having a problem, it's the team's responsibility to build that person up. If they notice that someone's not paying attention, or that their team is maybe needs a little bit more direction or focus, it is the team's responsibility to build that up, to work and operate that way. And that happens within the first hour of class. Now I've got them set up, and the next 5 days, they're mine. And also I learn their names. The very beginning, 30, 40 students, I learn their names that first morning. Every single one of them. Because I've also found that it's very important from the beginning to learn their names, because they're important. And in a lot of classroom settings, people seem to get lost in a classroom setting because there's only one instructor or two instructors, and they get so involved with what's going on, they don't focus on the individual. And so for me, it's a personal preference to learn each person's name so I can address them and talk to them. So if I notice, Alex over there isn't participating where his whole rest of his group is, but he's not, I can call on Alex when I have something very simple, maybe a yes or maybe he's not comfortable talking yet, and I can draw him out. So, do you have something that you can share with that, without putting him on the spot, but use his name so he understands that I remember you're important. What you have to say and contribute is important to this class. And so I try to do that with all of them. I usually am successful at it by the first day. Not always, but some names are harder than others. And then I make it very clear to them, too, that they will each be a leader of their squad. They each get to perform in what's the word for it? They perform in that function as the leader of the team. And we spend the first day or two going through, fire behavior stuff, but the rest of the days is safety. I mean, 1 6-hour, group of time is all fire terms and behaviors and weather factors and topographies and fuels and all that fun stuff, which you would think would be the lion's share of fire, but really isn't. It's 4 days of safety, just drilling safety into their head and how it relates to what we just learned in the previous 6 hours, And so when we get to who's going to be the leader and who's going to do these different things, safety is always number one. And they learn very quickly, too, that they have to, one, talk to each other. They can't just be the leader to be the leader. They actually have to communicate, and they have to assert themselves. In every single exercise we do, they have to assert themselves, and not everyone's comfortable with that. And that tells me something, too. Who is ready to be, maybe next year, who might move better into a more leadership position, and who needs a little more work? Who can I work with this year to make them, a little more, forceful or a little more aggressive in the way they communicate? Makes them communicate clearly, which not everyone is in our day of texting and email and stuff like that. Verbal communication is kind of going by the wayside. And so it teaches them to communicate verbally and be clear with what they want to say. It also teaches them how to avoid and also resolve conflict. Because there's always going to be one jokester on the team, and there's always going to be somebody that, you know, everyone else doesn't trust. And there's always going to be some guy who thinks they know everything. And so dealing with those different personalities, by forcing each student to deal with those personalities, they're learning something that I personally can't directly teach them. They have to learn through experience. And so the way we set the class up in teaching, it makes it so fantastic because of the teamwork that it builds. It's incredible to watch all these guys come, you know, anywhere from 8 to 35 guys, show up on the first day, not knowing anybody, not knowing each other, each man for himself. 5 days later, they do the field work, the actual, after they've done all the exercises that we've added to the basic class. So, and to see them walk in a line, communicating with each other, all holding their tool on the right, correct side, you know, laughing and talking and ready to work, and just this one cohesive unit is incredible. Just to see them go from this individual to now they are adding to a team. They're an individual adding to a team instead of an individual adding to their own everything. And so by teaching, I've always enjoyed, that's my favorite part of teaching, is to see that transition, because it almost always happens, whether it sticks with them or not. Sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it does. But the ones it sticks with, they become successful, more successful in their lives than maybe they were previously. In all aspects of their lives, some of our guys go from being, you know, can't find a job or really struggling with their life, to when they're done fighting fire, even for 1 year, they build that confidence, they learn to work as a team, and then they go on to get these amazing jobs, you know, just stuff that they couldn't even think to get before, and because they learned how to operate. And it's enjoyable to know that I had a small, very small, but enjoyable part of doing that. I got to see that transition. And so, yeah, I've always enjoyed that as being an instructor. I enjoy seeing the transition, the positive transition in many of my students.